the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 20, the 2023 African Cup. This episode is part 2 on the players of Mauritania, the final selections. Here we go. Hello and welcome back to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. We're back for part 2 of our mediacast on the players of the 2023 African Cup. This episode deals with the final selections of Mauritania. In part 1, we compiled a list of players and their likelihood of reaching the final squad. That was based mostly on their participation over the past 2 years, though we did consider a few other factors as well. We ran out of time to do part 2 for some of the teams of the African Cup. So today we're redressing that. We're going back to review and complete the collection, as it were. The tournament actually has been played, but by this point we're going to take the perspective of just before the tournament as if we were doing the mediacast when we intended to. So this mediacast is divided into 3 sections. Section 1 is some preliminary information, including a look at games played after we did part 1. Section 2 is the main part of the mediacast, a review of the preliminary and final rosters that were released. So we'll compare that to the list that we compiled in part 1. And in section 3, we will summarize, reviewing surprise selections and non-selections, new players, and we'll also update on injuries. And then we'll end with a revised version of our spotlight review, our predictions of who we think will be starters. I'm kind of dreading that for Mauritania because in part 1 we found it to be quite difficult with players playing in different positions, coming in and out, and hard to kind of nail down evidence for the starters. Anyway, let's jump right in with section 1. So that is our some general information on the team here. So we'll begin with talking about the squad. Mauritania or teams were allowed to bring 27 players to the cup. That was actually raised from 23 to 27 in mid-December. And Mauritania produced a 42-man preliminary squad. A lot of teams had more on the preliminary squad. 55 players was the limit. A lot of teams had that, but just 42 for Mauritania, meaning they had to cut 15 of those players to create the final squad. I should be putting that information on the YouTube, on the graphic for the YouTube watchers. So there we go. And next, we look at the games. So we're going to look at the last 3 games they played, the 2 World Cup qualifiers in November, and then 1 pre-tournament friendly. Those were the last 3 games played before the Cup, and hopefully that'll give us some indication as to who the starters are going to be. So those 2 World Cup qualifying games were in November. We're not really interested in the scores, but I will say, for the sake of curiosity, the first one was against Congo DR. That was a 2-0 away loss. And the second, no, that was at home, actually. No, that was away. Their other one was away also in South Sudan, a 0-0 draw. Probably a bit disappointed with that result, but draw on the road, never a terrible result. And then a pre-tournament friendly in January, that was against Tunisia, and that was a 0-0 draw, so they'd probably be happy with that result. And there we have it. Those are the games that we're going to look at the end of each position to see who filled those positions most recently. So here we go with section 2, the main part of the mediacast, where we look at the list that we compiled for part 1 and compare it with the actual selections that were made. So we begin with manager Amir Abdou, and despite all his changing and shuffling, he is still the manager, and so we will consider him as having been selected for the final squad. All right, let's go on to goalkeepers. Here we had a definite candidate in newcomer Babacar Niasse. He just started during the period before the Cup, March 2022. We had him as a definite. We had a likely candidate in Namori Diaw. And then two possible candidates, Babacar Diop and Mbake Ndaye. And in part one, we thought that'd be an interesting battle to see who would come as the third keeper. Well, let's see what happened. Babacar Niasse, our definite candidate, was selected for the final squad, as was the likely candidate Namori Diop. Among the two possible candidates, Babacar Diop was the one that was selected. He was the starter in the 2021 African Cup there. However, Mbake Ndaye was not selected. He was just on the preliminary squad, not making the final cut. He was actually turned out to be the backup in the previous cup, but not used as much during the period. And now not selected for the final squad. However, we will have more to say about that in section 3. I'll leave you in suspense on that one. We do have a new candidate who was named to the preliminary squad. That was Abdurrahman Sarr. And he is a player that born in 2005, so 20 or 19 years old, perhaps a player for the future there, and that is why we're naming them, so that they're kind of name checked here, so that they won't seem like a new candidate in the future. Let's look at the 3 games then. In November, it was our definite candidate Babacar Niasse starting both of those games against Congo DR and South Sudan, and then against Tunisia, he also was the starter. So that gives us confidence there that Babacar Niasse would be the starter. In fact, he was one of the few players that we were confident about being a starter at the end of part 1. There. All right, that's goalkeepers. Let's move on to defenders and central defense. No definite candidates here, actually, but 3 likely candidates. The first, Hassan Hubaib. The second, Nu Mohamed El Abd. And the third one, Damini Salek. And we'll deal with those. Let's deal with those ones right away, because we have quite a few players to get through here. Hassan Hubaib was selected, as was Nu Mohamed El Abd. However, Damini Salek was not selected. We had him as a likely candidate because he was regularly called up. Didn't start much, though. Well, whatever the reason was, he was selected for the preliminary squad, but not the final squad there. Among possible candidates, we have 4 candidates. The first one was actually coded as a defensive midfielder, Yali Mohamed Delahi. But we moved him back to central defense because he played in that position quite a bit over the 2 years prior to this cup. And yes, let's go on to the next name, Bakary Ndaye, and next Lamine Ba, finally Lassana Diakabi. So we'll also just tell you how that turned out. So Yali Mohamed Delahi selected for the final squad. So was Bakary Ndaye, as was Lamine Ba. So the first 3 selected, but Lassana Diakabi selected for the preliminary squad, but not making the final cut there. We had a possible but unlikely candidate in Barama Ndoye, and he was not even selected for the preliminary squad. And then we had a few other names that we didn't put on the list. We said we would if they came up, but they didn't, none of them even making the preliminary squad. So that leaves us with 2 likely candidates, Hassan Hubaib and Nu Mohamed El Abd, and 3 possible candidates, Yali Mohamed Delahi, Bakary Ndaye, and Lamine Ba. Let's see in the recent games who was filling the position. So the first game was a 4-4-2 formation, so 2 central defenders there, and we have Hubaib and Delahi filling in the role there. The roles, I should say, plural. In the second game against South Sudan, also two central defenders in a 4-3-3 formation. And here we see the other two candidates, New Mohammed El Abd and Bakary Ndiaye. So that's why we were a bit confused about naming starters at the end of part one. But let's see what happened in the game against Tunisia. That is Ndiaye and Lamine Ba. So we're really seeing no pattern there, kind of all the players being used, and that's going to make it difficult for us to nominate a starter when we get to the spotlight review section. So all five of our players seeing at least one game, and Ndiaye seeing two there. All right, on to left back position. We had a definite candidate in Ali Abeid, and he sometimes played as a central defender during the period, so we wouldn't be shocked to see him starting there, although he didn't over the past 3 games. He is a definite candidate. The likely candidate was Kadim Diaw there, and then we had 2 possible candidates, Hussein Abdurrahman and Abdul Qadir Thiam. Let's see how that turned out. Ali Abeid was selected. I believe he's the captain. I don't have it written down here, though. He was selected. Kadim Diaw, the likely candidate, also selected. And one of our 2 possible candidates making the preliminary squad, Abdul Qadir Thiam, but Hussein Abdurrahman not selected there. Even for the preliminary squad. We do have a new candidate. He only made the preliminary squad, but we'll put his name down for future reference. That is Sukrani Mahamed. Sukrani Mahamed possibly popping up in the future. So Abid Ali and Kadim Diaw. Let's see who started as left back in these 3 games. First one was Kadim Diaw. That was a first November game against Congo, but it was Ali Abeid in the following 2 games, the 2nd November game and the pre-tournament game against Tunisia. So I think we nominated him as the starter at the end of part 1, and we'll probably stick with that then. Right backs, not many candidates here. We had Ibrahima Keita, coming in March of 2022 and really seizing the position. So he was a definite candidate here. And we had a few other candidates. The only one we put on the list was El Mustafa Diaw, possibly because they might need a backup for this position. But we left the others off. Let's see who was selected. Ibrahima Keita selected for the final squad, and El Mustafa Diaw, like the other players we had on our list. No, I'm wrong. Anyway, El Mustafa Diaw not selected for the final squad. However, one of the other players who was seemingly off the squad was nominated to the preliminary squad, and that was Lemrabot El Hassan. Lemrabot El Hassan. So had last appeared in November 2021, but still in the picture because he was named to the preliminary squad here. Okay, let's look at the right side of the field, and we're predicting Ibrahima Keita starting all games here. He started both of the November games, and against Tunisia, though, it was central defender New Mohammed El Abd starting there on the left. So I don't think that shakes our confidence, though, in Ibrahima Keita being the starter. Whatever that means, that Ibrahima Keita not starting that pre-tournament game. Okay, on to the midfield, and we begin with our list for defensive midfielders. No definite or likely candidates there, but 3 possible candidates: Almiki Ndaye, Omare Gassama, and Bakari Kamara. And then 2 possible but unlikely candidates: Sidi Yaqub Ethmain and El Haji Ba. Let's see who made it. So Omari Gassama was selected. We actually moved him in the list. No, we didn't. I'll just skip that comment. Omari Gassama then selected for the squad. Bakary Kamara also selected for the squad. But the first of our possible candidates, Almiki Ndaye, not selected even for the preliminary squad there. Rather, it's our possible but unlikely candidate, El Hadji Ba, that was selected for the final squad. So a bit of a surprise there. And Sidi Yacoub Ethmane, or Ethmane, I think it's Ethmane, was selected for the preliminary squad, despite being possible but unlikely, but not making the final cut. And we do have one new candidate just making the preliminary squad here, Mohamed Saeed. So again, a player we might see in the future. Before we look at the recent games, we'll also cover the central midfield. There we had a definite candidate in Boda Moussine, Boda Moussine perhaps, and then two likely candidates, Guasuma Fofana and Abdallah Mahmoud. And on the graphic, I already gave it away because Bodi Moussine highlighted in green here, meaning that he was selected for the final squad, as were our two likely candidates, Guasuma Fofana and Abdallahi Mahmoud. Who we did note in part one was sometimes playing as a right attacking midfielder, and we do have more to say about him in section 3 as well. We do have several new candidates here, actually, and this is quite interesting because a couple of them made it to the final squad. So we have Umar Ngom, Mohamed Lamine, sometimes called Mohamed Lamine Hobat, and Sidi Ahmed El Ad. And as I said, two of these players made it. Umar Ngom selected for the final squad, as was Sidi Ahmed El Ad. But Mohamed Lamine just making it for the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. So two new players in the picture here. Let's see if either of them show up in January. Anyway, let's go back to the November game, and we see it is Moussine Boda and Guesama Fofana. That is actually the standard pairing, though only in about 2/3 of the games. We noted in part one that this was quite complex in terms of consistency too, but if we have to choose players, those would be the two. In the second game in November, also Fofana and Boda, but this time it's a three-man midfield in that 4-3-3 formation, and one of the attacking players plays as the right midfielder. We'll come back and address that when we meet those more attacking players. Perhaps most interestingly, though, against Tunisia, we have a 4-2-3-1 formation. So two defensive midfielders. The first the actually coded defensive midfield, Omar Gassama and Mahmoud. Just looking for, Abdallahi Mahmoud. So playing as a defensive midfielder, more like what he's coded as, rather than as a right attacking midfielder, which he sometimes plays. So a bit unexpected there to see Boda and Guesuma replaced by two players who hadn't played as much, and so that kind of muddies the water that much more. But I gotta say, over the past 2 years, that's the kind of thing we've seen with different players coming in and out. We also have two new players to add to the mix, so I promise great confusion in the spotlight review. That's the central midfield. We'll move on to left and right midfielders. Actually, no players coded as left midfielders. So, but right midfielders, we did have a likely candidate in Mohamed Suaid. actually sometimes secondarily coded as a forward, and he does move around the field. But it doesn't matter much because he was only selected for the preliminary squad and not selected. That was a bit of a surprise because he was a likely candidate there, and we won't be seeing him in the Cup. We did have a couple of other players on the list. We said we'd add them if they came into the picture, but they did not. So we move on to the upper left quadrant of the field. Left wingers, or depending on the formation, could be left attacking midfielder or left forward. And we had no definite or likely candidates here, but we did have Aboubakari Koita as a possible candidate. And we had Umar Kamara seemingly off the squad. Aboubakar Koita, the possible candidate, was selected for the final squad. Umar Kamara not selected even for the preliminary squad, but a new name here in El Mami Teta. El Mami Teta, newly added, but only making the preliminary squad there. He plays for Alanyaspor in Turkey, and wouldn't be surprised if we see him in the future. Okay, I'm going to postpone looking at the left wingers because I am expecting to see some right wingers or even forwards occupying this position. So we're going to come back. Aboubakari Koita, only a possible candidate there, so we don't necessarily see him, or he didn't occupy the position all that much in the 2 years leading up to the Cup. Let's take a look at right wingers. That's also a short list here, and we have Idrissa Thiam as a possible candidate, and Mamadou Niasse as a possible but unlikely candidate. And just as on the left, we have Idrissa Thiam making the final squad, but Mamadou Niasse not even named to the preliminary squad. So what is going to happen here? They have just one candidate for each position. Well, what's probably going to happen is some of our central attacking midfielders or forwards will occupy the position. So again, I'm going to postpone it until we meet some of those players. Let's move on to the more forward players. So we begin with central attacking midfielders. Here too, no definite or likely candidates. So what I said earlier, you know, a lot of players kind of coming in and out. So no one really playing enough for us to say that they're definite or likely candidates. Instead, we have three possible candidates, the first of whom is Yassine El Weli. Secondly, we had Hassan Mokhtar El Ide. And finally, we had Sidi Bouna Amar. We actually moved him to the top of the list in our files. I'll do that on the graphic here because we thought actually among the three of them, he was probably had the best chance. And that turned out to be the case because Sidi Bouna Amar was selected for the final squad, whereas Yassine El Weli and Hassan Mokhtar El Ide just made the preliminary squad there. But again, to give a bit of suspense, there is a bit more to say on one of those players. And I don't know if I mentioned our possible but unlikely player Bessem or Ahmed Bessem, but he wasn't selected even for the preliminary squad. So there's just one attacking midfielder, very thin up front here. I think it's time we did look at the games, even though I suspect some forwards will be involved. In the first game against Congo DR, it was a 4-4-2 formation. So we're looking at a left attacking winger and a right attacking winger. And we do have our candidate, Aboubakari Koita, filling the role on the left. Let's deal with the left first. In the second game against South Sudan, it's a 4-3-3 formation. So this is going to be a left forward position. And it's Koita again, Aboubakari Koita. So looks like becoming a bigger candidate to be a starter. In the third game, it is Aboubakar Sorry, it is Buna Amar, Sidi Buna Amar, moving over from the right to the left. Here, that's a 4-2-3-1 formation, so it is a left attacking midfielder there. But we do see Koita, Abubakar Koita, here in the center, central attacking midfield in that 4-2-3-1 formation. So Koita looking like a strong candidate here. And Thiam, sorry, we'll go over to the right side and we'll look at the Congo DR game. Again, a right midfielder, and it is Mahmoud. I don't think we've introduced him yet. Abdallahi Mahmoud, yes, we have introduced him as a central midfielder. As we said, he did play on the right several times. So he was the right attacking winger against Congo DR. In the second game, it was a right forward. It was also Abdallahi Mahmoud. And in the third game, the 4-2-3-1 formation, it is Idrissa Thiam, the right winger. I just want to see. Yes, he's our right winger over there. Okay. So that's it. A slim number of players to choose from here, but they are getting starts. So let's go on to the forwards now. And I thought, given the lack of candidates in the attacking midfield, that we would have more forwards, but we don't. We only have, again, I'm looking at attacking midfielders. There we go. We do have more forwards. As I thought. So we have a definite candidate in Pape Ibnu Ba, and a likely candidate in Hemea Tanji, and then three possible candidates: Abubakar Kamara, Suleiman An, and that is spelled Amne, so it could be Ane. I'm going to say Ane. And finally, third possible candidate, Suleiman Dukara. We also left Adama Bar on the list, seemingly off the squad, because we thought there was a thin chance of him coming back. But let's take a look and see who did or who was selected. Pape Ibnu Ba, our definite candidate, was selected. Only starts about half the time, though. Hemea Tanji was selected too. We've seen him start as a left attacking midfielder there sometimes. Possible candidates: Abubakar Kamara was selected. Suleimane Ane was selected too. So a lot of these players selected probably to kind of fill in the lack of players in the attacking midfield. And Suleimane Dukara, also selected for the squad. Adama Ba, though, proves to be truly off the squad, not even selected for the preliminary squad there. So 5 forwards making it to the cup, but we didn't actually see any of them in the last 3 games filling in that upper left quadrant or upper right quadrant of the field. Let's look at the forward line and see. It's a 4-4-2 formation against Congo DR. So 2 forwards, and it's Pape Ibnu Ba, our definite candidate, and our likely candidate, Hemea Tanji, both starting there. So that is kind of as expected. In the 4-3-3 formation against South Sudan, we saw that none of these players, these forwards, played as right or left forward. It was Hemea Tanji playing as the centre forward, though. But we do see Suleiman Ane as a right midfielder in that game against South Sudan. Finally, in the game against Mauritania, we see Hemea Tanji starting again, and otherwise none of the forwards in the starting lineup. So despite having these 5 forwards, only Tanji is being used regularly. All right, that brings us to the end of section 2. And so we move on to section 3. We'll begin by summarizing surprises here, beginning with notable non-selections. So really just the one here, that is central defender Damini Salak. He wasn't really a starter, but we did have him as a likely candidate to make the squad. But turns out he only made the preliminary squad there. For surprise inclusions, just one also here. We have El Hadji Ba, the defensive midfielder who we considered possible but unlikely making the squad. And then 2 new players, both of them central midfielders, that is Umar Ngom and Sidi Ahmed El Abd. Neither of those seem like they're going to be starters, so we won't introduce them beyond their names here. We do have some injury updates then, though, and some changes to the selection that we gave above. 2 players dropped due to injuries, and thus 2 players added. Let's deal with the players that were dropped. First is goalkeeper Babacar Diop, who was selected. If you recall, we had kind of a battle for the 3rd place keeper going on between him and Mbake Ndiaye. And it is actually Mbake Ndiaye who replaced him on the squad. So Babacar Diop out, Mbake Ndiaye in. Not so significant because he was probably just the 3rd string keeper. More significant, though, is central midfielder Abdallahi Mahmoud, the likely central midfielder who sometimes plays as a right attacking midfielder, injured in the warm-up game there with Tunisia. Well, I'm presuming that, but he did sub out at 44 minutes, so that definitely looks like an injury. Otherwise, they would have waited till halftime. And he showed up as injured and was removed from the squad after that. So that's a big loss for them, Abdallahi Mahmoud. And he was replaced by Yassin El Weli, the central attacking midfielder, who we had as a possible candidate, just like Mbake Ndiaye. So we won't put them as surprise selections on the list because both of the replacements were possible candidates. Okay, that is the kind of the update and review. So let's go to our Spotlight review. We're going to rename this the revised Spotlight review. So this is with the new information that we have. Let's look and see if we make any changes. What you see on the list, if you're looking at YouTube, is the Spotlight review we did at the end of part 1. It begins with Amir Abdu, the manager, just in blue. So we thought kind of a likely starter, as it were. But given all the changes and shifting and chopping, sometimes that indicates some problem on the team. So we weren't confident to put his name in green. But we are now because so close to the cup, we don't think they're going to change that. So Amir Abdu probably leading them through the cup, we think. Goalkeeper, we did have Babacar Niasse as the starting keeper after part 1, and our confidence is reinforced by what we saw. So we still have Niasse as the starting keeper. Central defense, though, well, we noted this in part 1, a lot of shifting and chopping. I think we were pretty hesitant, but we did nominate Hassan Hubaib and Mohamed Al Abd as potential, possible, probable, whatever blue means, starters, but not our full confidence. And now we change that because we see kind of 5 candidates who are possible, and none of them much higher than the possible level. But we're going to put Bakary Ndiaye as the most likely of the five to be a starter, but still just in blue here. So we're not even confident that he'll be a starter. So much changes going on back there. For left back, we had Ali Abeid as a definite candidate, one of the few definite candidates, but we weren't sure that he was going to start as left back. We thought Kadim Diaw might actually start as left back and Ali Abeid in central defence, but now we'll put Ali Abeid as a definite for the starting left back position, and we'll watch them kind of defy us in the first game, probably with Abeid in central defence and Diaw. But we're taking Diaw off the list now. On the right side, even though Ibrahima Keita didn't play against Tunisia, we still think he's the definite starter, and because he has been selected for the final squad, we continue to think he'll be the starter. Central midfielder, though, that's like a pack of cards shuffling, and we did kind of nominate Boda Musin and Gassuma Fofana. They started about a little less than 2/3 of the game there, but because they started both in November, that gave us a bit of confidence. However, in the game against Tunisia, the pre-tournament friendly, it was two different players. So we have to leave that blank. We have no idea who's going to be there. Right midfielder, we were also taken by surprise. We did have Mohamed Suaid as a probable starter somewhere, but then he wasn't selected for the final squad, so we have to remove him from the list, and we'll actually move his entire position from the list too, because now it'll be central midfielders or possibly an attacking midfielder coming back. On the left upper quadrant of the field, left wing, attacking midfielder, what have you, we do now have more confidence. We had it blank actually, but having seen the November games and the pre-tournament friendly, we do think Aboubakari Koita will be a starter. So we'll be a bit bold to put that in green, though my heart says more probable than definite, but I'll go with green. On the right wing, though, we really don't know. It's Mahmoud, who we'll get to shortly here, that we might have nominated, but now it turns out that he was not selected. We'll talk about that soon. But so we don't really have a candidate for the right midfield. And sorry, I just need to adjust something here. So we had that blank in the first place, and we're going to leave it blank. For forwards, we thought it could be any one of the three, Pape Nuba, Hamaya Tanji, and Aboubakar Kamara. But now we have more confidence that it'll be Hamaya Tanji as the forward. So we replaced those three blue candidates with one green one, Hamaya Tanji. We're going to put the weight of our formidable prediction behind him, and then we'll probably find out we're wrong shortly here. We do want to add one special mention player. So after looking at the lineups over the past three games, we would have said that Abdallahi Mahmoud, we would have probably put him in green as a starter, but as we see, he is injured and out of the tournament. So again, kind of highlighting that he's a big loss for them, because he would have been a definite candidate for us, but now not available to the squad. So yes, not a lot of confidence except for a few positions, and now we have the special ability here to actually look at the squad for the first game and test our predictions. So I'm just going to pause to prepare for that and come back and tell you who the actual starters in game one were. All right, I have taken the furtive glance at the game one lineup, and of course Amir Abdu is the manager. Goalkeeper, we predicted Babacar Niasse as the starter, and indeed he was in game one. Central defence, we were quite confused, especially by the January game, so we made some changes there. All we ended up with was Bakary Ndiaye as the as our most likely starter, and he did not start. So there we have it. Rather, we have New Mohammed Al Abd starting in the two-man defense. It's a 4-4-2 formation. Which is not really a surprise. He had been on our list at the end of part one as one of several possible starters. More surprising, though, is Lamine Ba, because we had him just as a possible candidate to make the squad. And although he was kind of among the candidates to be the starter, he probably would have been the most or the least likely one. So I consider that a bit of a surprise. At left back, Ali Abed. We were confident about that, one of the few positions we were confident about, and he was selected. Right back, Ibrahim Keita, despite missing the friendly there with Tunisia, pre-tournament friendly, we didn't think that would ruin his chances of being a starter, and it did. Ibrahim Keita, the starting right back. Moving on to the midfield, so 4-4-2 formation with two central midfielders. The first one was Gassama Fofana. I would say, by the way, we had removed everyone from the list because we were just generally confused with all the players coming in and out. The first one who did start, Gassama Fofana, is not a surprise. He had been on our list as kind of a likely to probable starter, but we were messed up by the changes in the pre-tournament friendly. The second one, a bit more of a surprise, Omar Gassama. Again, just a possible candidate to make the squad. So a bit of a surprise to see him chosen as the starter, especially ahead of Boda Hussein. On the right wing, on the left wing, we did add Aboubakary Keita in part two, thinking that he would be a starter. And I'm going to deal with him and forward Hemaya Tanji at the same time. We also added him to the list as a definite starter. Well, both of them did start, but they kind of switched positions. So Aboubakary Keita, the left winger, or left attacking midfielder, starting as a right forward, and Hemaya Tanji starting as a left attacking midfielder. Actually, yes, a 4-4-2, so starting as a left winger, which actually is a bit less of a surprise because we did see him starting in that position over the past 2 years. So apart from the position switch, things went as expected there. On the right wing, we didn't know who to nominate as a candidate, but it turned out to be the player coded as a right winger, Idrissa Thiam. So not really a surprise, mildly surprising in the sense that he had only been a possible candidate, but really he was the only candidate coded as a right winger. So not a shock that he was selected. And then the other forward is Camara. So we had Hemaya Tanji as a forward. He started as a left winger. The forward starting alongside him in the 4-2-2 is Aboubakar Kamara. So not the definite candidate Pape Ibn Ba, but rather the possible candidate Aboubakar Kamara. So a bit of a surprise there too, not a shock, but a special surprise. And of course, Abdallahi Mahmoud, injured for the Cup, probably would have been a starter, or so we think. All right, that brings us to the end of our look at Mauritania. And Mauritania is not a team guaranteed to make it to the 2025 African Cup. So we kind of hope to see them back next time. But that's it for this time, and we'll see. We will come back to Mauritania when they reach their next African Cup. We would like to thank Pixabay and Alexei Ivanov of Mappa Music for the wonderful background music accompanying this mediacast.